Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Okay, now, speaking of trust, which is my segue. So one of the things, there were a lot of items this week that were
Greg,
pretty
I think
interesting.
if you have to announce that it's a segue, it's probably not strong enough.
Okay, all right. We'll go. Coming again. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. All right, you've thrown me off now, Mike. So, the one of the things that caught my eye this week that I wrote about, I guess it was Wednesday, maybe it was Monday, was the New York the new biometrics law that went into effect. So it was passed in January, went into effect in July, and basically the law says if you're doing anything sort of to collect biometric related data, which is facial recognition or other things, I don't know what that would include, fingerprints or voice or anything that's sort of biometric, even though people aren't getting fingerprints, you cannot sell that data to anybody. There's a hard moratorium on transferring that data. There's also a requirement that you have to post signage prominently at the entrances of the building, I believe, that says we're collecting, we're doing facial recognition here, for example, or we've got surveillance or something going on. And, of course, these closed circuit TV surveillance notifications have been around for a long time. But I'm interested in this because it's something that people are uncomfortable with fundamentally. Police and financial institutions are exempted, but it's something that people are fundamentally uncomfortable with. But will their behavior change in any way? And is the law, through its sort of what I characterize as public shaming, trying to dissuade businesses from adopting, for example, facial recognition? So these are sort of the interesting questions to me. What do you guys think about this?
It's hard for me to imagine it functioning at a city level as opposed to state or national level. So there's that. It's like if you have a business, if you're a multi-location chain, it's hard to have different policies one place than the next. So I can't imagine business likes it very much because of that. I wonder if the notice, if it's prominent enough, would act like the notice on your iPhone. Gee, Facebook wants to track you. You're going to allow it.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. That's precisely what I'm wondering. Would you stop at the door? Let's say you're going into a retailer, right? Some retail store to shop, the North Face or some, whatever, REI, someplace like that, or a grocery store for that matter. And it says on the front door, we're using facial recognition technology. We're going to capture your image. Would that give you pause or cause you to shop somewhere else? That's the interesting question.
I think it depends, right? I mean, if I've driven half an hour to get to a store and they've got that on there, am I going to eat that hour round trip?
Or you're just going to pull the bandana up over your face and put your head down.
Yeah, COVID works in that situation, I suppose.
No, I just, the public shaming is, yes, it will probably dissuade some people in some situations, but I think your earlier point, like, how much do people really care about this? I think CCTV's been everywhere forever, and it's just sort of
people basically
a fact of life.
Are resigned
exactly.
to it.
And I think it's even worse in certain other countries abroad. The UK, it seems like there are cameras absolutely everywhere, at least in Greater London.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's going to have a huge impact. I guess I'm generally supportive of legislation and policies that make society more aware of all the data that's getting collected on them. But in this particular case, I don't know that it's going to be hugely impactful. So,
does it require disclosure of how they're using the facial recognition data? Because I think,
well, not in the signage.
Right, but at this point, I mean, you look, you see that we're doing facial recognition as a line on the door. I mean, without context, I don't imagine it would change behavior. But people have been using their apps for a while. They've heard about tracking. They know they're being tracked. So now that Apple is asking, it becomes an issue. I think it's similar with this. I think most people aren't aware of the implications of facial recognition broadly. And I think as that awareness increases, the response will become more prominent.
Some municipalities are outlawing it or trying to outlaw it because of the potential for abuse, I guess. But this sort of raises a larger point, which is interesting to me, which is the way in which people are kind of reconciled to using these tools and capabilities or complying with policies that they fundamentally oppose or make them uncomfortable. And so I think at some point in the past we talked about the Edelman Trust Barometer that found people fundamentally trust, and this is a slightly different issue. This is not privacy exactly. People fundamentally trust traditional media, print, broadcast, radio, and they distrust digital media. But the audience is in the exact opposite place. People are using digital media daily. They're not using traditional media quite as much. And so they're using these tools with a corresponding lack of trust, which is also part of the privacy piece. So one of the reasons why people don't trust Facebook or don't trust Google or Amazon to whatever degree is because of the perception that these companies are taking their data without really their knowledge terribly or their consent and doing things with it that they don't really understand. And so it's a very curious situation where we're dependent upon all these platforms and tools in our daily lives, but we're less and less trusting of them, more and more ambivalent about them. And I think it's a kind of a major problem, but nobody seems to be doing anything about it. Nobody has quit Facebook really in terms of a sort of mass.
But a lot of people have clicked
scale.
No, don't track me.
Yes, because it's so simple, and so it's just very intuitively understanding, and they give you a tool.
And
right?
a third party benefits from that. In other words, Apple is benefiting from offering you that choice and gaining trust while increasing distrust of Facebook. So it's a third party that's benefiting. So that's sort of it's just me interacting with Facebook. It's very difficult for me to feel like I have any power. But if it's Apple giving me the choice to kick Facebook in the shins, that seems a little easier to do. And I wonder if there's no analogy to facial recognition in that power relationship. I mean, I choose to use Apple exclusively because of that. I use Apple TV, I use Apple phones because I don't want people snooping on me all the time.
Right, but this is a very important point. Essentially, another way to look at what you're saying is that unless you have a surrogate acting on your behalf that's of equivalent power in the market, you really don't, there's really no recourse for you. So, the notion that the individual consumer, the burden has been placed on the consumer to take total control of their privacy historically, and this is really the first opportunity that people have some sort of powerful company in their corner, even though the Apple's motives are clearly mixed. And so this is sort of busts the myth of individual choice in a certain way.
Oh, I agree. I mean, it feels powerless frequently, and so in that powerlessness, you end up continuing to just do what's convenient.
Well, I mean, on the other end of the spectrum is China, right? With its total surveillance of its population. And, we're sort of creeping toward that, even though these tools are being rolled out for business purposes ostensibly. There's a way in which they then contribute to this sort of larger surveillance phenomenon that exists in China as the most extreme.
Although, it'd be interesting. It's hard to assess. Is centralized surveillance worse than Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Samsung, Microsoft surveillance? Is it? How do you even put these on the same scale and assess them? One is worse than the other. I mean, they're all pretty invasive, and it may be that it's worse to have 5 companies, or 10 companies, or 20 companies surveilling you.
So private industry versus the government.
I'm postulating this. I'm not saying I know the answer to this question, but it's hard to even judge because so much of it goes on that we don't know about.
Well, you've seen all the movies, right? I watched all the Jason Bourne movies where they're trying to track him down, and it's like, show me all the CCTV, get me all the cell phone records, get me, just this sort of perception of a huge instantaneously available
in England, at least
information
in all the
dump.
police procedurals about England, it's like every block they can follow people through. Like David
exactly.
said,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
Except invariably, no, invariably they don't. Despite the prevalence of CCTV, invariably they don't have the footage. Right? That's what happens in the show. It's like, is there? What about CCTV? No, we don't have it. You know, to enable the drama to sort of build and create uncertainty.
Back to David's handkerchief and hat.
Yeah, exactly. So on that dystopian note, I think we're at the end of our
At least it was said in a positive
But as
tone.
always,
We almost got there. So.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I say it with a smile. So thank you again for listening. Subscribe to the blog, give us feedback, come back again. We love you.
Have a great weekend or week, depending on when you're listening.
Right. Or if you're in space, enjoy. If you're a space tourist now, enjoy that experience.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.